Oh, wait, let's unpack this. We are stepping back into the saga of a family dynasty, one that tried desperately, really, to break free from its past, but found that legacy, power, and, well, the sins of the father have an undeniably heavy price. Today, our mission is to embark on a deep dive into The Godfather Part III, Redemption's Heavy Price. Now, we know what some of you might be thinking, Part 3.
Right.
It's a film that often sparks debate, kind of lives in the shadow of its legendary predecessors.
Absolutely. Big shoes to fill.
Huge. But as we've delved into the source material for this deep dive, it becomes, honestly, abundantly clear that Part 3 isn't just a concluding chapter. It's a powerful, maybe even vital exploration of profound universal themes.
Yeah, really profound stuff.
We're talking about the crushing weight of guilt, the elusive nature of redemption, the complex bonds of family, and the insidious, inescapable grasp of power itself. Our goal for you, the listener, is to give you a shortcut, basically, to understanding why this film, despite maybe its initial critical reception, is an absolutely crucial piece of the Corleone story. It's packed with surprising facts and ultimately these tragic turns that kind of redefine the entire saga.
And what's truly fascinating as we look at the material is how precisely the film positions itself. It's set specifically in 1979 and 1980, so that's almost 2 decades after the events of Part 2.
Right, quite a jump.
Yeah, big jump. And this time jump immediately places Michael Corleone, brought to life by Al Pacino, not as that young, calculating strategist anymore, but as an aging man. And his burden isn't merely the weight of his vast, now seemingly legitimate empire. It's something far more profound and personal. It's that lingering, inescapable ghost of his brother Fredo,
Fredo, yeah.
whose murder Michael ordered in that chilling climax of Part 2. You remember that?
Unforgettable.
So the narrative here isn't simply about a mob boss trying to go straight in the twilight of his life. It's really a profound character study. It details Michael's final, almost desperate attempt to legitimize not just his financial holdings, but, crucially, to cleanse his very soul. It forces us really to confront a deeply human dilemma. Can you truly escape your past? Or is destiny perhaps tragically pre-written by the choices you've already made? The film and the rich sources we've looked at, they lean heavily towards that latter, more somber truth.
And that burden of the past, that inescapable weight, that's precisely where we begin our deep dive into Michael Corleone's pursuit of redemption. At the outset of Part 3, Michael is, like you said, a profoundly changed man from the cold-eyed, calculating Don we last saw. He's older, immensely wealthy, yes, but beneath that veneer of respectability, he's visibly haunted.
You can see it in his eyes.
Definitely. The sources really emphasize this internal torment. They make it clear his primary motivation isn't about accumulating more power or expanding some criminal enterprise anymore. Instead, it's almost entirely centered on 2 profoundly personal objectives. First, to fully legitimize the Corleone family business, to make it not just acceptable, but truly respectable in the eyes of the world, free from its tainted origins. And perhaps even more importantly, his second driving motivation is seeking a kind of personal absolution, a true spiritual redemption. The specific aching wound that fuels this relentless quest, as our sources highlight again and again, is the unresolved guilt from murdering his brother Fredo.
That shadow hangs long.
It really does. That act, a pivotal and horrifying turning point in Part 2, now looms like a phantom over every single decision Michael makes. It's not just a memory, it feels like a living wound that manifests in sleepless nights and this palpable spiritual exhaustion. And compounding this deep personal torment is the stark reality of his fractured family life. He's long divorced from Kay Adams, played by Diane Keaton, and crucially estranged from their children, Mary and Anthony.
Right, the family unit is broken.
Completely. This broken dynamic, which is a direct consequence of his life choices, immediately sets up the emotional landscape of the film. It presents us with a man who has achieved immense worldly success, but at a devastating, maybe irreparable personal cost. The lavishness of his life is just in stark contrast to the emptiness of his relationships.
And what's truly striking here, what the sources underscore with real clarity, is that Michael isn't just, cleaning up his books or moving assets around to safer, more reputable ventures. His desire for legitimacy isn't simply about financial security or protecting his fortune from legal trouble.
Yeah.
It's much deeper, an almost desperate spiritual and emotional yearning for peace.
Peace. Yeah. Something money can't buy.
Exactly. Think about it. Here's a man who possesses immense, almost unimaginable wealth, power that once seemed absolute. Yet he carries this palpable internal torment that all that money just can't soothe. It's a striking paradox. And the narrative brilliantly establishes this internal conflict through the fragmented state of his family. The very people he supposedly built this empire for his wives, his children, they're either distant, disapproving, or actively trying to escape his influence entirely.
Right, Anthony wanting to be an opera singer, not a don.
Precisely. So this foundational guilt, this deep-seated regret over Fredo's death, it isn't just a background detail. It's the engine that drives nearly every decision Michael makes throughout the film. It explains the why behind his increasingly desperate and ultimately tragic actions. He's trying to buy his way out of hell, basically, not just financially, but spiritually, seeking a redemption that seems forever just out of reach.
And Michael's first grand, almost theatrical move in this desperate bid for redemption and legitimacy is showcased right in the film's opening scene. We're transported to this lavish ceremony. Michael is being honored as a respected philanthropist. He's getting adorned with a papal order from the Catholic Church itself. This award is for his extensive charitable work through the newly established Vito Corleone Foundation.
The irony is just, wow, it's immense, isn't it? Pause for a moment and consider the profound irony here. A man whose hands are stained with so much blood, who ordered the deaths of countless people, including his own brother, is now being celebrated by the very institution meant to embody purity, moral authority, forgiveness. It's a jarring, almost unsettling image.
Absolutely. It immediately sets the tone for the film's exploration of hypocrisy and those blurred lines between power and piety. And at this very ceremony, amidst all the solemnity and gilded opulence, we get this rapid-fire update on the state of the Corleone family. We learn that Tom Hagen, Michael's fiercely loyal consigliere, his adopted brother, has sadly passed away. That leaves a big void.
A huge void. Tom was the steady hand.
He really was. And in a truly unexpected turn, Tom's son, Andrew Hagen, has, of all things, become a priest.
Wow. Yeah, that signals a shift.
Doesn't it? It immediately signals a new direction for a branch of the family, seemingly away from the darkness. Then there's Michael's own son, Anthony. He's defiantly chosen a path far removed from the family business, pursuing his dream of becoming an opera singer, a world of art and beauty, seemingly untainted by violence.
Trying to break the mold.
Exactly. And finally, his daughter, Mary Corleone, is actively involved, helping to run the family's charitable foundation, which is ostensibly the very symbol of their newfound legitimacy. These quick updates underscore Michael's attempt to sever ties with the past. Yet, as we'll see, the past has a way of clinging on.
And this opening scene, as the material profoundly articulates, is absolutely crucial for understanding the film's central conflict and Michael's internal struggle. He is outwardly respectable, right? He's receiving accolades from the church, publicly embracing philanthropy, even giving a speech about the importance of family. Yet the scene subtly, and then not so subtly, hints that the past is never truly left behind. You have the presence of familiar faces from the old days, the family in attendance, underscoring that this is still very much the Corleone world, just dressed in different clothes.
Right. Same players, different stage.
Exactly. And the very nature of his charity, seemingly funded by illicit gains from his previous life, immediately raises that important question. Is this genuine redemption? A true transformation? Or just a new, more sophisticated facade for the same old pursuit of power and influence, albeit on a grander, more legitimate stage? And those swift updates on the family, particularly Andrew Hagen becoming a priest and Anthony choosing opera, they highlight the family's desperate attempts, and often painful failures, to break free from the traditional Corleone path. But Mary's involvement, ironically, pulls her closer into his dangerous orbit.
Yeah, that's a crucial point.
It's a meticulously crafted stage set for an internal and external battle for Michael's soul and the family's future. And Michael's own silence on his supposed redemption, it's deafening. It speaks volumes about the depth of his internal conflict.
So, with this stage so intricately set, Michael's desperate pursuit of legitimacy hinges almost entirely on one colossal transaction: the acquisition of a controlling stake in Internationale Immobiliare. This is a Vatican-controlled real estate corporation. This isn't just any business deal. The sources emphasize the staggering sum involved a $600 million donation to the church.
$600 million back then. That's astronomical.
Truly monumental. And this underscores the sheer scale of Michael's ambition and his almost naive hope that by associating with an institution as ancient, venerable, and seemingly incorruptible as the Vatican, he can finally truly cleanse the Corleone name of its bloodstained past. It's the ultimate financial and moral laundering scheme, designed not just to legitimize his fortune, but to buy his way into a world of unquestionable respectability. He sees this as his final, decisive step out of the darkness and into the light.
What's truly fascinating here is the sheer audacity of Michael's belief. He genuinely seems to think that by aligning himself with an institution as ostensibly pure and sacred as the Vatican, he could finally launder not just his vast fortune, but, like you said, his very soul. It's a classic Corleone move, isn't it? An attempt to bring a legitimate face to an inherently corrupt enterprise.
Right, the ultimate rebranding.
Exactly. But the tragedy, as the source material immediately highlights, lies in the inherent contradiction. He's seeking purity through a transaction that is, from its very inception, steeped in corruption.
He walks right into it.
He does. He steps into this grand, legitimate world, only to find it mirroring in chilling detail the dark one he tried so desperately to escape. It's profound commentary on the nature of power itself, how it can corrupt even the most sacred institutions. The Immobiliare deal isn't just a business transaction. It's a symbolic battleground for Michael's soul, and he walks right into a trap he kind of helped lay.
And he certainly finds that corruption. I mean, one of the most cynical yet compelling revelations in the film, backed by our detailed sources, is the deep-seated rot Michael encounters within the Vatican itself. This isn't just a matter of a few shady businessmen on the periphery. We're talking about high-ranking figures. Individuals like Archbishop Gilday, who manages the Vatican Bank, and the mysterious financial wizard Friedrich Keinzig, along with other powerful Vatican insiders.
These aren't small players.
Not at all. These are people deeply implicated in this fraudulent Immobiliare deal, manipulating funds, forging documents. What makes this so shocking is that these aren't outsiders trying to infiltrate. These are people at the very heart of the church's financial operations. It reveals a world of spiritual corruption far more insidious than the street-level violence Michael is used to. He thought he was dealing with God's representatives, but he found himself in a nest of vipers.
And what's truly insightful from the material is the explicit way it shows that the corruption isn't just external to the church. It's woven into its very fabric. This dramatically blurs the lines between what should be divine, sacred institutions and the ruthless, often criminal enterprise Michael knows so well. It suggests a deeply cynical yet perhaps realistic view that power, regardless of its source or supposed sanctity, is susceptible to the same fundamental vices: greed, deceit, manipulation.
It's universal.
It really seems to be. It's a powerful statement that Michael, in his quest for redemption and purity from a life of crime, ironically plunges deeper into a different yet equally insidious form of corruption. He traded the mafia's blunt instruments for the Vatican's poison chalice, basically. And this environment is further complicated by the fact that the aging Pope Paul VI is gravely ill. That creates internal power struggles within the Vatican, a sort of succession crisis that mirrors those Michael was all too familiar with in the mafia world.
Ah, so history repeats itself, even there.
It's a volatile environment where the lines between good and evil, legitimate and illegitimate, are not just blurred, but completely eradicated. It leaves Michael exposed and vulnerable, despite his immense wealth.
As Michael attempts to navigate this morally murky world, trying to establish his legitimate foothold, the echoes of his past, and indeed the Corleone family's past, come roaring back in the formidable form of Vincent Mancini. Vincent is Sonny Corleone's hot-headed, illegitimate son, and the sources describe him as nothing short of a force of nature.
Oh, yeah. Andy Garcia's performance is electric.
It really is. He's ambitious, fiercely loyal, and undeniably violent. A raw, untamed mirror of Michael's younger self, particularly the driven, ruthless Michael we witnessed in Part 1. It's almost as if the universe is delivering a cruel message to Michael. You can't escape who you are or where you came from, no matter how hard you try to legitimize. Vincent is the living, breathing reminder of the brutal origins Michael wants so desperately to leave behind.
Vincent isn't just a new character introduced to push the plot forward in the Corleone saga. He's a living embodiment of the family's primal past, the raw, untamed violence, the impulsive aggression, the quick temper that defined Sonny.
Right, the ghost of Sonny.
Exactly. These are the very traits Michael has tried so desperately to suppress in himself and to systematically purge from his organization in his pursuit of a more controlled, legitimate future. So Vincent's very presence, therefore, raises a profoundly unsettling question for Michael and for us. Is Michael truly trying to escape the legacy of violence, or is he inadvertently perpetuating it by bringing Vincent, this undeniable echo of their brutal origins, into the fold?
It's a dangerous game.
The dramatic irony is palpable. Michael needs Vincent's capability to navigate the dangerous waters of both the old and new worlds, but in doing so, he brings the very force he seeks to quell even closer to his family's heart. His re-entry into the family dynamic immediately foreshadows the continued cycle of violence that Michael so desperately wishes to put behind him. It highlights the deep-seated magnetic pull of the Corleone identity.
And it doesn't take long for Vincent to prove just how violent and effective he is in ways that make Michael's old methods seem almost, well, quaint. He quickly clashes with a rival gangster named Joey Zasa.
Joe Mantegna, great in that role.
Fantastic. Zasa is aggressively attempting to take over the Corleone crime interests in New York. This escalating conflict isn't just a minor street skirmish. It culminates in one of the film's most brutal and unforgettable scenes. The infamous helicopter hit on a mafia meeting orchestrated by Zasa.
That scene is shocking.
It really is. It's a shocking, almost futuristic display of modern, impersonal violence infiltrating the traditional mob world. The sources really bring home the jarring shift this represents, moving from the close quarters, personal betrayals of the earlier films to an almost military-style aerial assault. It's a statement about the changing landscape of organized crime, one that Michael, with his old-world sensibilities, is ill-equipped to handle alone.
And this isn't just a plot point to demonstrate Vincent's capabilities. It's a visceral, unforgettable reminder of the chaotic and brutal world Michael is so desperately trying to escape, yet keeps getting pulled back into with terrifying force. The sheer brutality of it, particularly the aerial attack that indiscriminately targets so many, serves as a stark, horrifying contrast to Michael's carefully constructed philanthropic facade and his attempts at respectability. It screams that the old ways, the violence, the ruthless pursuit of power are still very much alive and potent, regardless of Michael's desires.
And the personal toll on Michael is huge.
Immediate and profound. The sources explicitly state that he suffers a diabetic stroke in the aftermath of the attack. This isn't just a physical ailment, it's a profound manifestation of his psychological distress and the immense pressure he's under. This physical and emotional vulnerability weakens him significantly, making him even more susceptible to the allure of the old ways and, crucially, to Vincent's violently decisive solutions, which appear on the surface to offer a quick, brutal path to stability in a world spinning out of his control.
The ultimate irony.
Exactly. His attempts to legitimize only pull him deeper into the very chaos he seeks to leave.
During Michael's recovery from that harrowing stroke, when he's at his most vulnerable, another complex and deeply controversial element emerges. A passionate romantic relationship develops between Michael's beloved daughter, Mary, and the fiery Vincent. This is, of course, highly controversial, as they are first cousins, a fact the film doesn't shy away from, but rather highlights as a point of contention within the family. The narrative, as explored in the source material, depicts their genuine affection, but it immediately signals a potential new layer of complication and danger, almost a symbolic, incestuous pullback into the very core of the Corleone family's dark legacy. It's a relationship born out of proximity and shared lineage, but, you just know, destined for tragic consequences.
And what's truly fascinating here is how this romance acts as a double-edged sword for Michael, a cruel twist of fate that traps him further. On one hand, you could argue it represents a potential future for the family, a blending of the new generation, a continuation of the Corleone name, perhaps even a hope for stability. But on the other, and far more prominently, it pulls Mary directly and irrevocably into the dangerous orbit of the Corleone world.
Which is the last thing Michael wanted.
Exactly. It's precisely what Michael has tried so strenuously to protect her from throughout her entire life. He sent her to college, encouraged her work with the foundation, tried to keep her far from the family business. The cousin aspect, as the sources highlight, adds another layer of profound moral and familial complexity, making the relationship inherently fraught and loaded with symbolic weight. It's almost a sign that the family cannot escape its own self-destructive patterns, a form of tragic self-consumption, where even love reinforces the very bonds of the criminal enterprise.
Michael, as anyone might expect, strongly disapproves of this relationship. His fear isn't just based on the familial ties, though that's certainly a factor. Primarily, it stems from his visceral terror for Mary's safety. He sees Vincent's inherent connection to the family's violent past, his impulsive nature, his magnetic pull towards the brutal solutions Michael himself once embodied. Michael knows the danger that this kind of life carries, especially for an innocent like Mary.
He knows the cost.
He knows it intimately. The sources directly quote Michael's poignant, almost heartbreaking warning to Vincent, a line heavy with his own personal tragedy. "You will lose her, just like I lost Kay." It's a statement that encapsulates his deep regret and his desperate wish to spare his daughter the same fate.
And this line isn't just a warning. It's a tragic prophecy born directly from Michael's own agonizing experience and the profound wisdom gained from a life of devastating loss. His profound loss of Kay, which the sources remind us was largely due to his relentless immersion in the family's dark and violent world, makes him acutely aware of the devastating price of such a life. He literally alienated the woman he loved for the sake of the family business.
Sacrificed love for power.
So this warning to Vincent underscores a core tragic theme that runs throughout the entire Corleone saga. The idea that the true cost of power in criminal enterprise is almost always borne by the next generation, especially those who try desperately to maintain a semblance of a normal life within it. Michael is trying almost futilely to save Mary from the same soul-crushing fate he imposed upon himself, a life devoid of genuine love and peace, replaced only by the cold comfort of power. It's a moment of stark, painful self-awareness for Michael, acknowledging his own past failures as a husband and father.
And this brings us to Vincent's ultimate, pivotal sacrifice, a moment that truly seals the Corleone family's fate. In a tense, almost paternal negotiation, Michael finally appoints Vincent as the new Don. He effectively passes the mantle of power to him, signaling a generational shift and the continuation of the family business, albeit with Michael's guidance. But this transfer comes with an explicit, non-negotiable condition. Vincent must end his relationship with Mary.
The ultimate price.
It is. Vincent, recognizing the immense weight of the family's future, his own boundless ambition, and Michael's unwavering conviction, agrees to this devastating term. He sacrifices his personal love and happiness for the survival and continuity of the family, embracing the obligations of the new Don.
This moment marks a truly pivotal shift, a deeply significant transfer of power that redefines the Corleone future and Michael's legacy. Michael, in his desperate, perhaps futile attempt to save what remains of his legitimate empire and ensure the family's survival, passes the mantle of the Don to Vincent. By doing so, he effectively acknowledges the undeniable continuation of the criminal legacy he so desperately tried to escape.
He's admitting defeat, in a way.
In a profound way. He's choosing survival over salvation, perpetuating the very cycle he sought to break. Vincent's agreement, sacrificing Mary for power, reinforces the cyclical, self-destructive nature of the Corleone tragedy. Personal happiness and love are always secondary to the family's survival and its dark, bloody obligations. It's a poignant echo of Michael's own sacrifices earlier in the saga, where he gave up his civilian life and his future with Kay to step into the role of the Don. Now he asks Vincent to make the same painful choice, ensuring the cycle of loss continues.
So as Vincent steps into his new, dark role, now with the weight of the family on his shoulders, Michael's attention, though weakened by his stroke and years of weariness, sharpens with a laser-like focus on the sprawling conspiracy he's stumbled into with the Vatican. He begins to fully realize that the immobilier deal, his supposed grand path to pure legitimacy and redemption, is not just tangled in corruption, but is rotten to its very core.
It goes deep.
Very deep. The sources emphasize the painstaking process through which he uncovers the full, horrifying extent of the plot, involving not just the figures we mentioned earlier, but a sprawling network of high-ranking church officials and other powerful, shadowy figures who have been manipulating the Vatican's finances for decades. It's a conspiracy far vaster and more entrenched than he could have imagined.
And this section profoundly highlights the film's pervasive theme of the corruption of power. It demonstrates that even the most sacred and venerable institutions can be thoroughly riddled with greed, deceit, and moral decay. Michael, in his seemingly noble quest for pure legitimacy, for a clean break from his past, finds himself trapped in a web that is just as insidious, just as deadly as the one he tried to leave behind.
It's inescapable.
It seems so. It forces him to confront the grim, undeniable reality that corruption isn't just a feature of the criminal underworld. It is, tragically, a universal human failing, particularly at the highest echelons of power, regardless of whether that power is secular or spiritual. He thought he was moving to a cleaner world, but he just found the same poison in different bottles, dispensed by different, more sophisticated hands. The material suggests that this deeper understanding of systemic corruption is almost as devastating to Michael as his personal losses, because it shatters his final illusion of finding true absolution in the legitimate world.
And as Michael and now Vincent begin to unravel this labyrinthine plot, the bodies start to drop, systematically and chillingly. Exactly. The sources detail a precise, almost surgical series of assassinations that occur as Michael closes in on the truth, preventing the exposure of the vast network. Key figures involved in the conspiracy are ruthlessly eliminated. We see the deaths of Archbishop Gilday, found dead in his bed, and Frederick Keinzig, grotesquely hung from a bridge. But the true power behind the entire plot, the calculating mastermind pulling the strings from the shadows, is ultimately revealed to be the seemingly innocuous Don Lucchese,
The old fox.
a powerful and ancient Sicilian mafioso. His brutal, protracted death, stabbed repeatedly with his own glasses, is a shocking moment. It's a chilling reminder that even in Michael's desperate pursuit of legitimacy, violence remains the ultimate brutal tool of resolution in his world.
And these aren't random acts of violence, as the material confirms. They're calculated, strategic moves designed to dismantle a vast illicit network of power and influence that threaten Michael's final legacy. The fact that Michael and Vincent are either orchestrating or directly benefiting from these eliminations underscores the idea that even in his pursuit of redemption and a cleaner future, Michael is still operating firmly within the brutal logic of his past life.
The means justify the end for him.
Or so he rationalizes. He's using the old methods to achieve a new purpose, but the means inevitably taint the ends. Don Lucchese's revelation as the mastermind solidifies the film's portrayal of a hidden, ancient, and deeply powerful force manipulating events from the shadows, a force far older and more entrenched than Michael's own family. It's a grim, undeniable reality that violence remains the ultimate, inescapable solution in this world, even for those striving for a legitimate future. It underscores that Michael cannot fully escape the character he became. He can only refine the application of his ruthlessness.
All these converging plot lines, Michael's desperate quest for legitimacy, Vincent's embrace of the family's violent legacy, and the unraveling of a vast, unholy conspiracy all lead to the film's emotional and truly tragic climax. The scene is Palermo, Sicily, during a performance of the opera Cavalleria Rusticana, where, in a moment of profound poetic irony, Michael's son Anthony is singing.
His big debut.
Exactly. There's this incredible, almost unbearable contrast in the atmosphere. The sublime beauty and exquisite artistry of opera unfolding on stage, its themes of honor, betrayal, and revenge resonating through the theater.
Powerful themes.
Set against the backdrop of the impending, brutal violence that is about to erupt around the Corleone family outside. It's a powerful, almost operatic setup in itself, a grand stage for a family's final devastating act.
And what's truly fascinating here, and brilliantly highlighted in the sources, is the deliberate and highly symbolic choice of Cavalleria Rusticana for the opera. This particular opera is a short, intense verismo piece, renowned for its themes of honor, betrayal, and particularly tragic revenge, often ending in a bloody duel. It serves as an incredibly powerful backdrop, mirroring the operatic scale of the Corleone family's own tragic drama unfolding in real time just outside the theater.
Art imitating life, or life imitating art.
Right. And Anthony, attempting so desperately to forge his own path through the beauty of art and escape his family's shadow, ironically becomes an unwitting and terribly vulnerable participant in his family's violent crescendo. The juxtaposition is heartbreaking. The son pursuing pure beauty, while the father is consumed by the ugliness of his past, reaching its horrific peak during his son's performance. It signifies the inescapable nature of their legacy, even in moments of apparent peace.
And during the opera's climactic final aria, the film masterfully weaves together parallel events, escalating the tension to an almost unbearable degree. Inside the opera house, Vincent, now firmly established as the new Don, has orchestrated the systematic assassination of all the remaining conspirators involved in the Immobiliare and church scandal. This simultaneous, coordinated strike brings the cycle of revenge to its brutal, bloody conclusion, effectively cleaning house.
Settling all family business.
The old world of Vatican corruption and ancient mob rivalries is being purged. But as the opera ends and the Corleone family, believing themselves finally safe, exits the theater into the bustling street, a lone hitman, part of the final retaliatory wave set in motion by Lucchese's faction, attempts to assassinate Michael. It's a swift, violent, and utterly shocking moment of targeted chaos.
And this scene is not just a high-octane climax. It's a masterful culmination of all the film's intricate threads. Michael's desperate pursuit of legitimacy, the inescapable cycle of violence, and his agonizing attempts at redemption. The simultaneous resolution of the Vatican plot and the immediate brutal retaliation against Michael underscores a chilling, foundational idea that violence inexorably begets violence, and that any true escape from the past, any true break from this cycle, is ultimately an illusion.
There's no clean slate.
None whatsoever. Michael can cleanse his business, but he cannot cleanse his soul or escape the repercussions of his choices. It is a moment of profound, almost unbearable dramatic irony as the family believes they are finally free, only to be violently pulled back in by the consequences of their actions, the legitimate world offering no more sanctuary than the underworld. The sources emphasize this as the ultimate price Michael has to pay, not in his own blood, but in the blood of the innocent.
And in that split second, amidst the chaos and confusion, the ultimate, most devastating price is paid. In a truly heart-wrenching moment that just silences the audience. Mary, Michael's beloved daughter.
That was brutal.
The one he tried so hard to protect, the innocent symbol of his hoped-for legitimacy, is accidentally shot and killed in his arms during the assassination attempt on him. It's a moment of absolute, crushing finality. The film then captures Michael's reaction in a way that transcends dialogue, a silent, guttural scream. He clutches his daughter, his mouth open in a primal display of raw, unadulterated agony. There is no sound from him, just pure, visceral pain. He's utterly overwhelmed by an unbearable grief, a profound sense of loss and guilt that words simply cannot convey. This single image, more than any other, encapsulates the tragic core of the entire saga.
And what the sources truly highlight about Mary's death isn't just that it's a tragic plot point, but that it is the ultimate, most profound price of Michael's choices and the corrosive legacy of the Corleone family. It symbolizes the tragic, often unearned cost borne by the next generation, particularly those who are innocent bystanders or who strive desperately to live outside the family's violent orbit. Mary, who simply wanted to be with the man she loved, becomes the final innocent casualty of her father's past.
The ultimate collateral damage.
Precisely. Michael's silent scream speaks volumes. It's the raw, unadulterated agony of a man who has lost everything he truly valued, everything he tried to protect, despite having gained immense power. It's the catastrophic moment where his lifelong, desperate quest for redemption is utterly shattered, replaced by an even deeper, more unbearable guilt that will now define and consume the remainder of his life. It's the cruelest form of justice, delivered not by law, but by destiny.
And it is that consuming, unyielding guilt that brings us to the film's final, profoundly quiet scene. Years later, we see an old, broken Michael Corleone. He's no longer the formidable Don nor the tormented middle-aged man. He's simply an aged figure, sitting alone in the sun-drenched courtyard of a Sicilian villa.
After alone.
Utterly alone. There are no words exchanged, no grand pronouncements. He is simply reflecting silently on a life that, despite its immense power and wealth, is utterly riddled with loss, betrayal, and death. He's surrounded by beauty, yet utterly devoid of joy. It's a haunting image of profound isolation, a man living out his final days as a ghost of his former self.
And this scene, as the sources emphasize, is the ultimate, heartbreaking realization of Michael's fate. He achieved the power he sought, the legitimacy he craved. He even outlived most of his enemies, but at an utterly unbearable personal cost. The pervasive silence and profound isolation of this final image emphasize the crushing emptiness of his victories, the chilling absence of the family he sacrificed everything for. He is truly alone, a king without a kingdom in spirit, his empire reduced to a vast solitary prison. The visual of him playing alone with an orange, that subtle nod to the oranges that often foreshadowed death in the earlier films, underlines the sense of an inescapable destiny, a tragic cycle completed.
And then just as quietly and unceremoniously as he lived his final years, Michael Corleone simply slumps in his chair and dies alone.
Just slips away.
Yeah, there's no violent end, no dramatic showdown, no final words. He dies in total isolation, far from the embrace of any loved one, haunted only by the choices he made throughout his life. This brings us full circle to a chilling prophecy made by his father, Vito Corleone, way back in the first film. Whoever comes to you with this Barzini meeting, he's the traitor. But Michael dies not by external treachery, not by a rival's bullet, but by the devastating internal consequences of his own life's choices, alone with his sins and his memories. It's a death of the soul, long before the body gives out.
And the fact that Michael dies alone, and not violently, is absolutely crucial to the film's ultimate message and its profound tragic arc. It's a death by loneliness, a slow, agonizing decay of the soul rather than a sudden dramatic end. This aligns perfectly with Vito's earlier prophecy, but it also elevates it. The deepest betrayal wasn't from an external enemy like Barzini, but from within Michael himself, in his own choices that led to this profound, agonizing isolation. His life, so outwardly successful, culminating in immense power and legitimate business dealings, ends in utter spiritual bankruptcy. He is a man utterly alone with his sins, the very definition of a classical tragic figure whose ambition led to his undoing. The silence of his death echoes the silence of his scream for Mary, a life of noise ending in an emptiness he created himself.
So after this intense journey through Michael Corleone's tragic final chapter, what does it all truly mean? The sources we've examined explicitly lay out some key themes that are woven throughout The Godfather Part III, offering profound insights beyond the surface narrative. Let's unpack them, starting with redemption and guilt. Michael, as we've discussed, desperately wants to atone for his past sins, particularly the murder of Fredo. But the film strongly suggests it's ultimately too late for true spiritual redemption.
And what's truly compelling about this theme, as the material delves into it, is the question it poses. Is Michael's relentless quest for redemption a genuine spiritual journey, a true turning away from his past? Or is it merely another power play, a sophisticated attempt to sanitize his public image and ease his conscience without truly changing his fundamental nature?
Right, is it real or just another performance?
Exactly. The film seems to argue, quite forcefully, that some sins are simply too profound, too deeply ingrained, to be absolved by money or superficial piety. The crushing weight of the guilt he carries ultimately consumes him, rather than being lifted. His attempts to achieve a clean future only highlight the indelible stain of his past, a past he can never truly outrun or erase. His suffering is not for others, but an internal, isolating torment.
Then there's the pervasive theme of the corruption of power. The film unflinchingly shows how even an institution as revered and seemingly untouchable as the Catholic Church is deeply corrupted, mirroring Michael's own criminal world. This effectively blurs the lines between what we perceive as divine institutions and criminal enterprise, revealing that vice can flourish anywhere.
And the material is very direct in stating how the church itself is tainted. It reveals a deeply cynical, yet perhaps realistic view that corruption isn't limited to the underworld of organized crime. It is a universal force that permeates all powerful structures. This suggests that Michael, in trying to move into supposedly legitimate spheres, simply encountered the same vices, the same moral compromises, but in a different guise, cloaked investments rather than pinstripes.
Same game, different players.
Pretty much. It's a powerful statement about the nature of power itself. It inevitably corrupts, regardless of the institution it inhabits. The film suggests a universal truth. Wherever there is great power, there is also the potential for great corruption. And Michael, in his desperate attempt to find purity, instead finds a mirror of his own world.
Next, we have the heartbreaking central theme of family and legacy. Despite Michael's fervent efforts to go legitimate and break free from the past, the cycle of violence inexorably continues, demonstrating the powerful grit of destiny. And the tragic cost is borne most heavily and agonizingly by the next generation, symbolized most powerfully and irrevocably by Mary's death.
The film's most heartbreaking message, as highlighted by our sources, is perhaps that the very family, the very institution the Corleones fight so brutally to protect and elevate, is ultimately destroyed by the very methods used to protect it. It's a self-consuming cycle.
They destroy what they love.
In essence, yes. Mary's death is the ultimate devastating proof that the sins of the father are indeed visited upon the children, and that the legacy Michael so painstakingly built is one of profound, irredeemable loss and fragmentation. He wanted to secure their future, but his choices annihilated it. The deep irony is that the strength of the Corleone family, their insular loyalty and ruthless protection, became the very thing that imprisoned and ultimately destroyed its innocent members.
And finally, encompassing all these elements, from the personal torment to the systemic corruption, is the overarching theme of tragedy. The story of Michael Corleone in Part 3 truly unfolds as a fully Shakespearean tragedy in its scope, portraying a protagonist who gains immense power and influence, but loses everything truly valuable in the process, culminating in a lonely, desolate death.
The film truly leans into the classical elements of tragedy, as the sources emphasize. A protagonist, Michael Corleone, with a fatal flaw, his inability to truly escape or atone for his past, and its inherent violence, who achieves great external power but loses everything truly valuable in the process. Love, family, peace. His lonely, unceremonious death isn't just a sad ending. It's the inevitable, profound consequence of a life built on violence, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of power that ultimately consumed him. It's a character arc that mirrors the great tragic figures of literature, where a man's greatest strengths also become the instruments of his deepest downfall.
So, how was The Godfather Part III received when it first came out? The sources we've examined tell us it was nominated for a very respectable 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actor for Al Pacino. That's no small feat for any film.
Not at all. Pretty significant recognition.
Right. However, it's also clear that it was significantly less critically acclaimed than its legendary predecessors, Parts 1 and 2, which are, of course, universally regarded as cinematic masterpieces. This created a complicated legacy for the film right from the start.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that following cinematic masterpieces like The Godfather Part 1 and Part 2, Any sequel, no matter how well-intentioned or executed, would face immense, almost impossible scrutiny.
The bar was impossibly high.
Exactly. There was an expectation set that was nearly impossible to meet. While it didn't reach the same legendary, universally acclaimed status as its forebears, the numerous Oscar nominations clearly show it was still recognized as a significant cinematic achievement in its own right. It was regarded by many as a solid, if somber, and perhaps even bleak conclusion to the epic saga. The material suggests that over time, its critical standing has somewhat improved, as audiences and critics alike have begun to view it less as a direct comparison and more as its own distinct tragic epilogue.
And speaking of initial reception, our sources also highlight the particularly strong criticism that Sofia Coppola received for her performance as Mary in the film. This was a notable point of contention for many critics and viewers at the time.
Oh, that was definitely a major talking point.
It really was. However, it's absolutely crucial to remember that this early critique did not define her career in the slightest, and she went on to achieve major, undeniable success as a visionary director, carving out her own distinctive and celebrated path in cinema.
Absolutely. The criticism for Sofia Coppola's performance was certainly strong at the time, and it was widely discussed, creating an unfortunate buzz around her role. However, as you rightly point out, it's crucial to separate that specific acting critique from her incredible, undeniable talent and her later, truly groundbreaking achievements as a director. Her subsequent career, marked by critically acclaimed films like Lost in Translation, for which she won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay in Marie Antoinette, is a testament to her resilience, her unique artistic vision, and her profound talent. It proves definitively that one perceived setback certainly does not define an entire career, and that a creative spirit can always find its true calling.
A fantastic point. And that brings us to the end of this deep dive into The Godfather Part III, Redemption's Heavy Price. As I revisited material, something truly resonated with me about Michael Corleone's final journey. We've seen how he tried desperately to legitimize his world, to escape the shadows of his past and find absolution, only to discover that power, whether criminal or seemingly divine, can be equally corrupting, a perpetual moral quicksand.
No escape there.
None. The true devastating cost of his choices and the inescapable weight of the family's legacy was ultimately borne by his loved ones, culminating in a profound and isolating end that left him utterly alone with his sins.
Which raises an important question for you, our listener, to consider, perhaps long after our deep dive ends. In our own lives, how much of our past truly defines our present and future? Can we ever truly legitimize ourselves or escape the consequences of our actions? Or are we always, in some fundamental way, carrying the weight of our previous actions and legacies? Michael Corleone's story suggests, with a heavy wand, that some debts cannot ever truly be paid, and some shadows tragically cannot be outrun. It's a reminder that even the most powerful individuals can find themselves trapped by the very foundations they built their lives upon.
We encourage you to reflect on these profound questions and perhaps re-examine the film through this new lens, or simply apply these insights to your own understanding of power, legacy, and the elusive nature of redemption. Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.